We were not called to live on the fence. We were not called to be on the sidelines. We were not called to, as Don was talking about in the Bible class, just put on a coat of Christianity and then take it off when you head out the door. We weren't called to have this lukewarm Christianity. And even saying that phrase seems completely ridiculous to me. Because, we get that from Revelation with the church at Laodicea. And we talk about, oh, they're a lukewarm church, they're lukewarm Christians. But when I read that section, it doesn't seem like they're Christians. Because God doesn't say, oh, yes, you're mine, and it's okay that you're lukewarm. What he says is, I'm about to spit you out of my mouth. I'm about to get rid of you because I can't stand the taste that you leave with me. And when I hear people and they think, well, I'm just lukewarm. I'm just not very passionate about it. I just, go to church on Sunday. I do what I have to do. And I think God's happy with me. And I hear those things and I read verses like this and I think, we've got an epidemic on our hands. Because there are Christians all over the world who do not live as they should. Do not walk in a manner that's worthy of your calling. And if we keep on living as the world does, and not as we were called, we have to ask ourselves a question, am I really a Christian? Am I really a child of God? In Titus chapter 1, verses 15 through 16, it says these words, to the pure all things are pure, but to the defiled and the unbelieving nothing is pure. Both their minds and their consciences are defiled. Now listen to this part. They profess to know God, but they deny him by their works. They are detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good work. Do you know anyone like that? Who they say, yes, I know God. Yes, I'm a Christian. Yes, I go to church. But you look at their life and you think, no way. That is not the way you were called to. That is not the way we're supposed to be living. Yet they say, I know God, I'm a Christian. I hit share on Facebook. I forwarded the email. I have a bumper sticker. So many people say, I know God. I love God. But yet they deny him with their life. They deny him by their works. And we cannot be a group of people who are stuck on the fence. We cannot be a group of people who are complacent like this. Christ has called us to something so much greater. There's a quote, I forget the guy's name, but it's at the beginning of this song by a Christian group called DC Talk. And the song is called What If I Stumble? And the quote says, the greatest single cause of atheism in the world today is Christians who acknowledge Jesus with their lips, then walk out the door and deny him by their lifestyle. That is what an unbelieving world simply finds unbelievable. And I look at this room, and I look at the fact that there was 12 people here last week, and I can't help but wonder, is it because we're not walking in the manner to which we were called? And I'm not saying this to shame you or to guilt you, and I'm not excluding myself from this, but I'm saying this because I love you, and because I want you to live the life that God has called you to live. Because there is joy in that life. There is reward in that life. It is so worth it. But so many people don't see it that way. So now Paul is going to tell us a couple things. He's going to tell us how we live like this. What are some things we need to put on? What are some qualities we should seek after? In verse 2, it says, with all humility, and with gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. So first he says, humility. If you want to walk in a manner that's worthy of your call, you put on humility. Humility just means you don't think of yourself better than anyone else. You're not filled with pride. You're not filled with arrogance. You act as a servant. You follow the example of Christ when he would disrobe himself, humiliate himself, wash his disciples' feet. When he would die a humiliating death, when he would go through life not priding himself, not seeking his own glory, but always seeking the Father's. So he says you walk like that. You live like that in humility. And secondly, he says, you live with gentleness. You know, you're not mean to people, you're not rude, you're not rough with them, you don't easily get angered at them. You live with them in gentleness, in peace. Then he says you put on patience. You don't fly off the fuse. You don't get annoyed with people just because they're annoying. You don't act rude to them. You don't act mean to them. You are patient with them. You love them. And then he says, bearing with one another in love. That phrase is kind of interesting because it'd be like saying, I'm dealing with someone or I have to put up with them. But it has a much more positive connotation. He says, you bear with people in love. It's funny, we all talk about, oh, Christians are loving people, but sometimes we really aren't any loving than anyone else. Sometimes we just live like the world lives and says, well, I'll love the people who are nice to me. I'll be good to the people who are good to me. And what did Christ say on the Sermon on the Mount? Do not even the pagans and the tax collectors and the sinners do that. He says, I called you to something much greater, something much more. And then number 5, he says, you're eager to maintain the spirit of unity and the bond of peace. Now this is a big one. This is one that I think confuses a lot of people. Because unity is not conformity. They're not the same thing. Conformity is we're all the same. Unity is we're functioning as one even though we have differences. We are one body, but we're not all the same parts. We are one building, but we're not all the same material. We're one family, but we're not all the same member. We're not just all clones. We're not all alike. We have differences. We have differences of opinion. We have differences in tradition. We have differences in the way we grew up. But Christ is not saying be exactly the same. What he's saying is, in your differences, in your different, unique talents and gifts, strive for unity, strive for peace, be one. And that's what Christ prayed for. In John chapter 17, verses 20 through 23, it says, I do not ask for these only, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that they all may be one, just as you, Father, are in me, and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. And the glory that you have given me, I have given to them, that they may be one, even as we are one, I and them, and you and me, that they may be perfectly one, so that the world may know that you sent me and love them, even as you loved me. This is what Jesus prayed before he died. When he had time alone with the Father, he prayed for his disciples, and then he prayed for those who would be called through that message, through that gospel. And so he gets down on his knees. First he prays for his disciples, and then he says, okay, God, I just pray that you would make all the believers one. Just as you and I are one. Just as the Trinity is one, we are supposed to be one. In perfect unity. Together, functioning as one body. Not because we're all the same. Not because it's always easy. Not because we like everyone in the church. But because Christ prayed for it. Christ commanded it. And also Christ died for it. In Ephesians, the 2nd chapter, 13 through 14, it says, But now in Christ, you who were once far off have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. So what he says is, Christ's blood has covered everyone who's a Christian, everyone who's been called. And what he's saying is, you really have no excuse. If you're not a unified body, you have no excuse, because Christ died to abolish the wall of hostility, to take it away, to destroy it. And so now there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, man or woman, Scythian, barbarian. There's no difference because all are one. All are Christians. All are called by Christ. And he says if you want to walk in a way that's worthy of your calling, if you want to be a true follower of Christ, you need to be unified with the church. You can't be apart from them. You can't do it alone.